So if you're thinking about getting into high ticket sales, you might want to hear this first. If you can get over my pale ass legs, in today's video, I'm going to talk about the ugly truths about high ticket sales that no one really talks about. And there's a lot, by the way. If you don't know me, my name is Kevin. I am Ali Abdal's unofficial head of sales, and I run a high ticket sales advisory called Kaizen Closing. Just to let you know, quite recently, I made about like 14,000 in just 2 weeks with high ticket sales. And yes, this industry is very, very real too. And that's just with one client. And I have to be real, to be honest. Basically, I was really inspired by this. Doing an exercise called the morning pages. And I want to share all the things I wish I knew before starting high ticket sales. And to be honest, high ticket sales is that one thing that has really changed the trajectory in my life. I feel like it's kind of made me like a better marketer, a better YouTuber. I feel like a better person too, because of all the tangential skills high ticket sales teaches you and the soft skills you learn, like, communication and like emotional regulation, where you don't lash out on people or anything like that. And I hope that by knowing these things, it can now actually help you kickstart your own journey in a way of doing high ticket sales the right way. When I say right way, I think that's really important. Right is always very, very subjective to people. But I think the last thing that we really want is to be stuck in a career that drains your energy and makes you feel like you have to be a scammer just to make money. I've been on really bad offers before and it felt like that. And I'm just here to tell you it doesn't have to be like that. So let's talk about number one. You don't have to be a Wall Street sales bro to be successful in high ticket sales. So one of my favorite movies is actually The Wolf of Wall Street. It is freaking hilarious. But after watching that movie, it makes you think, am I like that guy? Am I like Leonardo DiCaprio scamming people? And so I think sometimes like the common population has this idea of sales that we need to be pushy or learn how to pitch to sell. In the Wolf of Wall Street episode, they're like, yo, sell me this pen, pitch me, things like that. And we imagine ourselves like to do sales, we have to be like that. But what I found is that it's not true at all. I'm going to be very real with you guys. I really suck at pitching. I really suck at being pushy. And when I first did sales, I was taught to kind of command the sale and all these other things that they teach you to do, assume the sale and all that, and have this certainty, right? But I realized that wasn't really me. And so back in the day when I first started on my first offers, I was taught to, read the script, assume the sale, kind of be this guru that I wasn't really, right? And I remember, the calls would start off pretty chill because it was discovery, getting to know the person. And I would start feeling this anxiousness right before we're talking about money, right before we're going for the close on the sales calls. There's this term of commission breath of this guy, he really wants to make his commissions, right? That's why he's pushing and pushing and pushing. And I definitely felt that as a novice. And if you're on any sort of ClickFunnels gurus sales team or anything like that, I've been there. And it's not fun. I've done well on those things, but it was because I kind of found my own identity. The number one thing I wish people told me was to think of myself as a trusted advisor instead of a sales bro, right? I think about consultants or someone you really, really respect that you trust. For me, my friend Mike Kim, he's 10 years older than me and he's been very successful in business. So I go to him for career advice, life advice, and he's been through divorces and all that sort of stuff too. And I really respect him a lot. And I imagine if he was selling to me, I would want that same vibe. I just feel very comfortable with that. Based off my experience, majority of people feel like that. And this is the attitude I take on to Ali Abdal's part-time YouTuber accelerator. I'm the unofficial head of sales for it right now. And the easiest way to be a trusted advisor, and people can feel this, by the way, it's implicit communication. It's not what you say, it's implicit, the vibe that is being communicated. But one of the things I always think about is what is the real problem that they're going through? Can we help them? And do we want to help them? And I think if you're performance-based, you have the right to be selective. You have the right to be picky of who your clients are and also who you choose to close, because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to sleep at night. And for me, legacy is really important. Leaving the world a better place is important, not ripping people off or scamming people too. Some of the things I would think about is would a trusted advisor, would they force someone to make a decision right away through pressure if they're not ready to? Or would they ask better questions to help that person gain better clarity on how to make the best decision? I think those things are really important. Now, there's also a distinction too. It's you're also not a pushover too. You're not a simp, right? Trying to just get a sale. For example, someone on one of my sales calls recently. She was like, oh, can you like do a breakdown and stuff and all this sort of stuff for my board? Because she's an organization. I understand they have a vendor selection process. And I was like, that's kind of out of the scope of what we can do. But what I can do is like, I can send you the transcription after. I can generate a quick like 1-minute prompt that will give you most of the points. Just let me know what the board would like to see and some of the things that would resonate with them on our call, right? And I did that and they were super happy. But it's important to be very open about what boundaries you want to set on what you can do and what you can't do. A good example of like setting boundaries is like sometimes people will ask you like, yo, can I speak to like your referrals, your current clients for referrals? And I'm like, hell no. But if you want a customized invoice on taxes or something like that, I'm happy to work with that, right? Like I did that recently. And so if you're performance based, you definitely have the right to just be like, hey, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing not to do this. And I think it's completely fine. Like for me, I'm okay losing the deal. Like if I have to do like a 3-page report for this person to make up their mind, it's really, really not for me. So yeah, I'm just scrolling down as I'm like looking through things. Number 2, walk away from sketchy people and offers. This is very, very real. And it kind of goes to my first point too. Something that a lot of people don't talk about is like sustainability, right? Like if you go on a very scammy offer, like a scammy person with the scammy offer, chances are it's not going to last that long, right? And then also if you close for a scammy offer and people know, your reputation actually like is probably not going to last that long too, because you'll be known as the scammy closer and stuff like that. And so I think at the end of the day, if we want to be sustainable in something, we need to stand up for what we believe is ethical. There are certain sales floors, certain ethics and values of certain clients I've had in the past. It didn't feel right. At the time, I was just so new that I didn't really know what those things were. And I'll talk about red flags later in this video. But the truth is like not every client is a good client. Okay. Back in the day, I actually worked with like a e-commerce coaching like organization. They were in the ClickFunnels community. They actually started very wholesome, wanting to really help people. But over time, they started focusing on scaling. It's usually around that when they're making around like 100K per week or per month, where there's like, ooh, you get to see their real colors come out. And they're like, ooh, let's focus more on like scaling and making more revenue. And they were at the point where we were clearing about 500K per week, which was really, really cool. Also at the same time, I noticed that they were just so focused on making ads and they weren't focused on fulfillment at all. And then we were getting more complaints about the fulfillment. And I was like, honestly, bro, I can't stay in this anymore. And I made the decision to leave. And literally overnight, I made from a few thousand to like 0. I felt like I started all over again. It was really, really hard, Basically, like they started scamming people, whether it was intentional or not. And so I just left completely. And I think the thing I really learned through that experience is like staying true to your values, even if it's tough in the short term, is so important. And I'll be honest, like looking back, they were one of the worst clients I've ever had in my life. I would never do it in a million years ever again. But it was also one of my best decisions because I look back at myself and I'm like, yo, Kevin, even though it was really tough, pretty much had to eat it for a bit. I'm very, very proud of you for like making that tough decision not to support like an organization like that. Because at the end of the day, I can sleep at night. And it's really sad because sometimes I do get texts through my old business number about like helping these people or like all this, but I've dissociated myself from that. I shouldn't be getting that sort of stuff anymore. So I closed the line and all that so I don't have to look at that. Okay, let's go into the next point. Look out for client red flags. When I say red flags, I mean those like very shady, ethical type of people or nightmare clients. These are the clients that you need to avoid at all costs. These are the clients that will blow up your phone at 2 a.m. They will nickel and dime you or even pay you late, or sometimes they won't even pay you at all. Like it's really bad. They will ask you to do things outside your scope of work for free. Like, hey, Kevin, can you like cold call this person, or can you write these email campaigns? Like this is what's known in consulting as scope creep. They will often have a say about everything, but are inexperienced. So if they're giving me like sales tips, but they've never done sales, like that's kind of weird. Oh, and this is a big one, by the way. They will ask you meet randomly because it's an emergency. But what you quickly find is that everything is an emergency to them, and their emergency is just their anxiety of running the business because they don't know how to manage and they don't know how to emotionally regulate, which is okay too. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But I think something we got to remember too is like, as much as we want to help a client, sometimes their emergency is not your emergency. Funny enough, I learned that from Dan Locke, but it's very, very true. Their emergency is not your emergency. And I think knowing your boundaries is very, very important. And if we don't follow these boundaries, they will make your life a living hell. And even worse, they won't even pay for it because you're performance based, most likely, if you're just starting out. In my opinion, these aren't bad people. A lot of times they have good intentions. They just don't know how to regulate their emotions, you know? So this person that came to mind, I met him through this program called Part-Time YouTuber Academy through Ali Abdal. Great program, by the way, but I met this one guy. We chopped it up, but then I think a year or two later, he quit his job just to go all in on his like back end offers and stuff. So he hits me up and he would do all this sort of stuff. He would like hit me up at 2 a.m. and all that. He was very cheap with the payment stuff, you know, but I f***ed up. I like should have charged him my full price, including like the upfront fees and the percentages. I should have stayed like strong with like my boundaries, because at the end of the day, what he ended up doing was like hitting me up at 2 a.m. He blamed me for all the stuff. Even though he went against my advice, he hired a freaking teenager and I told him no, like this is a bad idea, but he did it anyways and blamed it on me. And he was so impulsive and reactive. It was the worst. And even worse, he didn't pay me my full rate. And then he like terminated my contract and then took all my work and stuff, which really, really sucked. Even though it wasn't maybe 100% my fault, like it was my responsibility 100% for like vetting this person and enforcing my boundaries. I think at the end of the day, you just need to know your limits and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, resentment free. Like that's the key word, resentment free. And so your boundaries, you need to know them, you need to enforce them. And I think at the end of the day, if there's any of these red flags, you can always give it a shot, right? If you need experience, take the experience. But I would say it's best to avoid these people because they will get in their own way, like with their like reactiveness and stuff, and they will burn down the business. And my advice is like, hey, don't get in the way of that, because these people, like, unless they're working on it, like actively or getting coaching or something like that, they will absolutely burn down their business. Most of the people that had clients that were my clients before, like that were red flags, they're not in business anymore, thank God. And you don't want to play Captain Ho to save their business either. And it's not because they weren't good practitioners or good at what they did. It's because they don't know how to emotionally regulate, which puts them in a survival state. And then when they're in a survival state, they can't empathize, which affects delivery of your service or product and stuff. And now your product is under like fulfilled and people are just really upset. So don't let people do that to you. The next one is finding clients gets easier over time with experience. Not gonna lie, it's hard as finding your first client, because like, one, no one trusts you, you have no track record, you have no friends, colleague, or anyone to vouch for you, and you'll feel like an outsider just trying to break in. It's really hard. The only other feeling I can relate is like, it's like that catch-22 of like, hey, you're out of college, but you need to find your first job. When you're on the interviews, they're like, hey, do you have any experience? And then you're like, no. And they don't want to hire you. It's the same exact thing. It's kind of a risk for them to take you on, right? I can't blame the business owner too, because you are a risk, because you have a high ignorance tax, right? I would like to tell you is like, hey, don't give up. You'll probably have better luck if you are working with an agency. Like that's one way. Or B, you're working with like a bigger team where you can work your way up. So it might be appointment setter first. It might be inbound setter at first, right? Before you close deals. That is okay. That's actually how I started. Not as appointment setter, luckily, but I was doing like inbound setting and stuff. We'll talk more about that later. But yeah, like this works better for like bigger sales teams, but I would target those more versus like a smaller organization, because otherwise you're going to be the only closer on the offer, right? But I want to say, like, over time, just know that you'll meet more people, and it might not always be more clients, but you'll meet other closers, you'll meet other business owners, and when they think high ticket sales, because you have a personal relationship with them, they will refer you business even if you don't work with that person directly. And I just want to say, like, building this network takes time. You don't really need to like force it or anything like that either. Like, just like work on it a little bit. I think for me, like I always felt like I had this pressure to just like, oh, I want to meet everyone and I want to build all these connections. A lot of the connections that you meet probably won't stick around, because like, honestly, some of the closers I met weren't that great of people. To be honest, they were kind of scummy, which is a given, it's sales. But yeah, the lesson I kind of learned through like this network approach is like, when I think about people like Ali Abdaal and how I landed him, is like if you do good work for people or you try to help people, they will remember that. That is a very powerful thing. So for example, Vanessa Lau, when she was doing her mastermind, she actually asked me to help her with high ticket sales at the time. And after going to her mastermind, like a few other friends asked me to like help them with their high ticket sales stuff too. And because I was also like Ali Abdaal, I took his program, I bought his highest tier, I supported him. I also did an affiliate video that did super, super well and made Ali a bunch of money and also helped people. Like people were really, really happy. It was just a mutual exchange. Like Ali's team reached out to me to do high ticket sales for them. But what you don't see is like the tons and tons and tons of people I talked to just because I want to get to know them and just see if there was like a connection or something like that. And sometimes they turn into clients, but oftentimes they just turn into friends, and that's totally cool too. Like it doesn't always have to be like transactional like that, Let's talk about this one. 95% of people will quit high ticket sales because it's hard as. So I remember when a long time ago when I took a guru course. His name is Dan Locke. It's my dark ages. I'm sorry if you don't like him. His program was actually pretty cool for the networking, but like honestly, I used none of his high ticket sales stuff, honestly, at all. But when I did his program, I remember all these colleagues next to me trying to do it. They said that they were committed, they want to do high ticket sales, but when push came to shove, they started getting like punched in the face. It reminds me of this like Mike Tyson quote where he says like, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And this feels so true, right? I think like a lot of people who try to do high ticket sales, especially if you're by yourself, it's going to be really, really hard. It reminds me of pharmacy school. They have this saying like, hey, look to your left, look to your right, chances are they won't be there. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. Look to your left, look to your right during your white belt days, chances they won't be there either. And so the truth is like majority of people who do high ticket sales will quit. And so some of my friends, they dropped out during the program because they realized, oh, it's really not for me. The second most highest drop off point was like, oh, I can't find a client. And they spend months and months trying to like find clients. They just couldn't find it. So they dropped out there. And some couldn't keep a client because they sucked, because they're new, they had no experience, and it's really, really hard. And unless you learn really, really quickly or have someone to kind of show you the ropes, you'll probably quit. And then the last people I know, they were doing it, they were pretty decent at it, but they realized they freaking hated it. And they ended up quitting there and transitioned into like things like affiliate marketing, copywriting, other type of things too. YouTube, actually, like some of your biggest YouTubers, dude, I got some tea about like certain YouTubers, by the way, who were in that same program as me, but I'll just leave it like that. So I'd say if you're trying to do high ticket sales, like honestly, half the game is just staying in long enough to just reap the benefits of it. I was actually at my friend's mastermind event. My friend Mike Kim that I mentioned earlier. And I was talking about to one of the older people. Like everybody's like, I'm the youngest in the mastermind, but everybody's a lot older. And then the guy was saying like, honestly, like the key to business is just staying in the game because everybody else will quit. And even if you don't do the best work, people remember you for being a good person and they will trust you. So yeah, and I feel like the same thing is true with high ticket sales, where it's really hard to find a good high ticket sales closer. It's harder to find one that's ethical. It's harder to even find one with subject matter expertise, right? And so, like I said, if you stay in the game long enough, you'll win by default, because just like your jiu-jitsu thing, like you'll be the best black belt out of your white belt crew because there are no other white belts, man. They all dropped out. So yeah. Okay, let's get into the next one. You are not going to make a consistent amount every single month. So back in the day, I used to get like webinars from like Dan Locke and like these random inbound closers, like all these things, Jeremy Miners, everyone is like, oh yeah, learn how to make 30K per month, learn how to make X dollars per month. Like those numbers are actually pretty true once you get really, really good. But for beginners, it's highly, highly unlikely. So I think one misconception that you think about is like, oh, I will automatically collect 10K, 20K, 30K per month. And the truth is, this actually fluctuates quite a bit, because especially if you are performance-based only, because here's what they don't tell you on those webinars and stuff about this industry is like, one, there's like a few factors out of your control. Let's break down 4 of them. One, lead flow, right? You're kind of like bottom funnel. Like if we have top funnel, bottom funnel, you're bottom funnel. So everything is dependent on the marketing, whether they have content marketing, paid media and all that. Like, did you guys know during election years, like cost per lead shoots up like crazy? So chances are, if you are working with a client who only does paid media, like paid ads, it'll probably be a lot less, right? 3, sometimes like they'll have bad PR. Maybe there'll be like a hit piece on YouTube. Maybe there's just like a bad customer service thing. Maybe there's a negative review on the BBB or TripAdvisor or any of these sites. By the way, they can all be paid off, which is really up. Don't trust those things. I think Reddit actually is a really good place to do it. And then 4, there could be changes in demand for the offering in the general market, right? Like, back in the day, telegrams were really hot, right? Not the app Telegram, like when they used to tap the things and talk to the ships and stuff, right? I don't know. Or like carrier pigeons, right? Like they used to tie these piece of paper to a pigeon and it would know how to get there, right? Those things are probably not in demand in 2024, man. Like we have things like email or like Instagram and all these other things, right? And so that's why I say like you have to know that these factors are out of your control. And that's why you need to build contingency into your contract or agreement or into your business. You need to see yourself as a business. And because there will be unforeseen things that you won't anticipate. Even if you're experienced, this is very, very true too. So I think about this quote a lot. All profit is derived from risk. This means like the more risks that someone takes on, the more they deserve to profit. So the analogy I use is like insurance a lot. So if you pay higher insurance premiums when shit hits the fan, the insurance should pay out a lot because you are taking more of the risk. If there's nothing that happens to you, like the insurance company profits, right? Also, if you're on the other side and you have a low premium, high deductible, in that case, you are taking majority risk. And if nothing happens to you, then you deserve to profit more in essence. And so I think this is also the same concept that is true for like why employees don't always get paid a lot, because employers are taking more risk, like litigation, all these other things, hitting payroll. And for high ticket sales, like I would say if you are a complete beginner, you have no experience whatsoever, you are bearing most of the risk. And so when I first started, I was getting like 10%, which sucked, right? And I was like new and I had very, very little offer. So my client, the one that I was working for, they were paying my ignorance tax, right? As I've built up more experience, I realized that I'm actually not a liability anymore. Like I'm actually more of an asset. I have a higher chance to add value to the business. Now I won't look at anything under like 15% with my default being like 20. Not saying this is always the case. Like with my bigger client, like Ali Abdal, like they were on a lower commission, but I had them pay me a base because they're hedging my risk, right? If you are learning how to structure these things, contingencies and stuff, you can either A, charge a higher commission, or B, kind of factor in some sort of base, right? And you have to make sure it's profitable for you. That's your goal as a business, right? Like insurance companies don't do a stupid fucking risk because they want to profit, right? And so this is the same case here. And then the third thing I like to do is like sometimes I'll do like a marketing agency model of paying X dollars per month or X percentage, whatever's higher. In certain cases, you can actually do an and type of thing, which is like more like common in tech sales where they'll pay you a base and a commission on top of that. But at the end of the day, my main thing is like you should just be very, very aware who is taking on more risk, making sure it's resentment free on both ends, because that's how you make sure an agreement or client stays sustainable. Like if they're like, oh, I'm paying a lot for this guy and he's not performing, whatever performance means, they're going to feel it and they're going to probably terminate your contract. So just letting you guys know. The next thing, partner with someone that's more experienced than you. So back when I was on a high ticket closing team, like when I first started my first major client, that same client I was doing, like we were doing as a team, 500K per week, I almost got fired. I think I've told this story a few times, but at the time I was like scared as hell because this was a significant amount of income for me, but I just wasn't performing. And if I didn't make it work at the time, I would have to go back to pharmacy. And so I was like, oh my God, I gotta figure this out. And so at the time I was just like, okay, what are the top people doing? Like, what is their exact process? And funny enough, one of Tai Lopez's old sales managers, he was on the offer and I learned from him. Funny enough, he wasn't that shady. He was actually a really great guy. I'm still friends with him. They were at the time doing something called a set close model, which is a 2-part call. The set is just a discovery call and then close is the presentation. And so by using that model, they were able to take like more volume of calls, and they would split the commission down the middle. So one person would do discovery calls and another person would close, and they would switch too. They would like switch off. So another person would do the close and the other person would do set, and they would have set like times for all that. I can talk about this in another thing. So the set person does discovery calls, and then the close person outlines the scope of work, the presentation, and collect the payment and stuff and follow up. So after seeing this kind of model work, I decided to start setting for the top like closer performers, the top closers. So what I decided to do was like, okay, since I'm not that experienced, I need to work on these soft skills. I decided to start setting for those top performers. And so I basically did all the screening, discovery, and sent the information to the closer, right? And it actually worked and it benefited them two ways. Because one, it maximized the revenue per lead, because the more experienced person would have a less of a chance to get like a no-show or cancel call. And those deals were more likely to close because I've already pre-qualified them at this point. Eventually, like this benefited me because I got really, really good at the soft skills of things, like learning how to ask really great questions, learn how to pause, do all this sort of stuff. And so I got to work on that. And eventually I got good enough myself where I could just do the whole entire process relatively quickly, which is something I actually prefer. But in order to do that, my ego hated it. I had to realize I sucked, one, but two, like I had to swallow my pride and just be like, hey, I have to learn from people who are way better than me. And I would say if you are new, you are struggling, maybe if you get on a PIP, like a performance improvement plan, right? So basically you're on the chopping block of getting fired, maybe recommend this as a solution too. Like, sure, if you are getting paid 10% commission and you're splitting that with the closer and you're getting like 5% now, it doesn't sound like a whole lot at first, but it's better than 100% of zero, right? Like that's way better. And I think like a common misconception of high ticket sales is that you'll make like, $1,000 per day, which is very, very real, but like you need to have the skill to be able to do that. So let's talk about the next thing. You will develop your closing style over time. I think when it comes to high ticket sales, there's a lot of people that are like, hey, this is the right way to do it. When really in reality, there's no right or wrong way to close. There's just a few frameworks that you need to know. And something I've been kind of learning, like I told you earlier, like when I first started, everybody was telling me I have to assume the sale, kind of do a subject close, all these different things. At the end of the day, everyone has their own unique approach. And if I could go back in time and talk to myself, I would be like, hey, stop obsessing over the exact words that people are saying and focus on the intent behind what is being said. Because I was at that point where I would like listen to calls, I would transcribe them by hand because I just wanted it to work. And I think like at the end of the day, like most sales calls, they will kind of go like this, right? One, check to see why they booked the call. Two, understand what they're trying to accomplish with their goals or a solution like this. Three, understand their challenges. So what's keeping them stuck, friction points, their problems that they're experiencing. Four, just try and see what they've done, previous solutions, what they've tried already. I think this is one that a lot of people skip over. And then five, kind of like look out for potential red flags. So these are your typical objections, like what traditional people say. But I think the reason why they're objections is because people don't bring these things up. So I like to talk about things like timeframes, money, whether it's stretching them or not. And then decision makers too. If you're dealing with the organization, they will have a vendor selector process. They might have some discretionary spend too. So those are all important to talk about before like going through a whole presentation and all that. 6, really seeing how the offer would help them. 7, talk about the offer or how to maximize the offer based off their particular situation. I would not give a generic like pitch, a traditional pitch or anything like that. 8, there's a check-in to just see if it would actually help them. 9, collect payment and onboarding. So most calls will usually follow this format. From what I see, like this is a typical format I follow, but it's really up to you how you want to deliver the intention behind the words, because you could say the same exact thing, but the tonality might shift. For example, like one where a beginner might do it and one someone like myself would do it. So I just want to know if you were to consider a solution like this, when would you get started? 1 is the second one that I would probably do. So something I'm just curious about is if you were to consider a solution like this, when would you consider starting? right? Notice the pause in delivery. And it's really the intention behind the words. Like the second one is like, oh, I'm just like curious to see what's your estimated timeline on this? I'm not on the same page, right? Where the other one is more like, oh, this guy has strong commission breath, right? They're looking after their own paycheck and stuff. So I think it's also important, like if you are working with a client, that your tonality, the way that you do your sales also resonates with the brand too. And so I think that's a secret I kind of learned. The ideal situation is when you can match the brand voice with the client and the tonality with the voice of your client to your own voice. And I think that is really important. There's another element that's important too, is like you have to match their decision-making process. Some people like more data. Some people are based off the vibes. Some people want to talk to others. And then others, they just want to move really, really quickly. And so there's no right way, but you have to be versatile. And this comes with experience. It's not going to come through a course or overnight. It's just through experience. It's getting punched in the face over and over again, losing deals and stuff like that too, like what I did. Okay, let's go over something very unsexy. You'll sacrifice more than you think learning high ticket sales. So I'm not sure if you guys know, I never really talked about it, but I sacrificed my 6-figure career in pharmacy and I sacrificed my old relationship in LA to learn the skill. And most likely, I'm not saying you're going to lose your relationship doing this, but you're going to probably have to sacrifice something, right? And so one of the reasons why I actually didn't go back to pharmacy was because I always knew I wanted to start a business of my own. And I knew long term, if I want to be great in business, I need to have these skills of sales and being able to like kind of, it's not even sales, the art of pitching, it's the art of communication, right? And to anticipate, like to really understand what value means to people and communicate it better than they can, right? And being really good at asking questions. I remember when I was learning this skill in my LA apartment after taking a guru program, is like I went from making like a few thousand like every single week to only making a few $100s per month at times. It wasn't like that all the time, but when I first started, I wasn't that good. And I remember there were points where I had to really pull from my savings. And this is going to be super embarrassing, but there were times when I actually told my ex I was really, really tired and I want to stay in. She was so supportive, by the way. If I told her, she would have been totally cool. But really, sometimes if I be very true, like I wasn't doing well that financially and I was really ashamed to admit it. And if I could really go back in time, I would have that conversation with my ex, right? Because I wasn't emotionally mature like that. And I would just tell her everything that I was actually going through at the time. And I think at the time I was really blaming myself, a lot of myself on my self-worth based off my finances, how much I was making, all that sort of stuff. And something I realized too was like, yes, it's my responsibility. I took on that risk, but the truth is I was just learning and I was just paying my ignorance tax, as Alex Hormozy talks about it. And I'd recommend, if you are not making the money that you want to, that's okay. That's part of the process, but don't be too hard on yourself. I know very few people that were making like 30K off the bat. There are some people that will tell you that, but in most cases, I think they're fucking lying, to be honest with you. But I could be wrong too. Some people are just naturals. Let's go over to the next one. You don't need to read the script verbatim. Most people, like beginners, get caught up. They get really stressed out. And when you're stressed out, you start to overthink. And then you start doing everything verbatim, right? And there's no flexibility. One of those things is like reading the script. You get too caught up just reading everything like as is. And I think one of the things that a lot of beginners overlook is the art of being like really flexible, right? About the process. And I think the skill that most beginners don't realize is that being flexible probably requires the most skill, but beginners don't care about it because they're so in their head about doing it right and wrong. And you need to get that paradigm out of your head, to be honest with you. So when I first did high ticket sales, I used to have a sales manager who I'm friends with, by the way. Like I'm still friends, but he would say, read the script, you dummy, right? Like he would always say that because I don't think, like, honestly, it's not about the script. The script should be treated like an agenda of talking points, but people want to be listened to, understood, and made sure of and reassured that this is a potential good solution for them. And they're leaning on your advice, your not opinion, but your experience over time. So if you do go out, order on your script, it's not the end of the world. Like literally today I had a sales call and it was cool. We jumped all over the place. Typically I go over goals first and then challenges, but she was we're just in the conversation, and she was like, oh man, like I'm really struggling with this. I'm like, yeah, what's on your mind? She was like, I'm struggling with this, and this. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. What have you tried so far, right? So I went out of order, but it's okay. And it's actually, I would encourage you to go out of order sometimes too, and ask questions that you're genuinely curious about. Like if you're curious about something, ask it. If they made a comment that you like kind of more clarification, ask it. And definitely, if there's a red flag that they bring up, like money, partners, or timing, definitely ask that. Like, so if someone says finances have been just a stretch recently and we haven't been doing that well financially, I would immediately step in and just be like, hey, I want to be mindful of your situation right now, especially your financial one. I'm not sure if you're aware, but typically clients pay us X amount of dollars to work with us. Are those numbers that you could actually like potentially work with, right? Like, it's like things like that. You want to bring that up. And I think what I've kind of learned is that being flexible and listening, it implicitly communicates like genuine interest in the person, that you're taking care of them too. And this is what pisses me off about most sales gurus and stuff, because they'll tell you to actively listen, right? But they have no idea what that actually means. Active listening means like asking certain questions with tact. You don't ask someone, hey, how much money do you have, right? When do you want to start, right? It's like you want to have some tact, be like mindful about people's situations, especially on sensitive topics. If you watch me and you watch my tapes, I pretty much like use a lot of buffering. I use a lot of labeling. I use a lot of mirroring, these things from Never Split the Difference, which I can't find in my room right now. It's probably somewhere in this room, but I use that. I have people define terms a lot. So someone was asking me the other day, like, hey, I want to make sure I get a return on my investment. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, and he was more analytical. So I was like, yo, I'm actually really curious. When you're thinking about return on investment, how would you measure that, right? What are some things that are top of mind for that when it comes to ROI, right? Things like that. Active listening also means being very, very self-aware. So there's this concept in Never Split the Difference called the accusation audit. And that's when you bring up the concerns before they do, right? You know, if someone's talking about how busy they are, I'll bring it up. I'll just be like, hey, I do have a concern. You know, you mentioned that you're busy all the time. You're working all the time. Do you have any help? Do you have a team to help you do these things? Like it's things like that. That's like really, really important. And then I think adapting to that flow, like I was talking about earlier, that's really important. Let's go into the next truth, I guess. Finding a client with a great brand and offer will save you headache and make you money. So I would say, like, if I were to put a number to it, I would say 95% of the battle of the game is really finding a great client. Because if you work with a client that has a really trustworthy brand, a really well thought out offer, 80% of your selling is already done. They're pre-sold, right? Because of the brand and all that. I don't think people talk about this enough in high ticket sales, like of the importance of finding an amazing client. Like, and I'll break down one amazing client I do have. 6 different things. I'm looking at my iPad right now. Like, one, they have a trustworthy brand with their content. Content, in my opinion, is one of the strongest things that every business needs so that they can understand the values and like thought leadership and systems and all that. It just helps so much. 2, they have great lead flow without paid ads. So I'm not against paid ads. I think paid ads are really, really good for more exposure, and eventually they go down the content rabbit hole sometimes. But I think great lead flow without ads tells me that they have great presence. They have something unique. They have a unique positioning in the market space. So there's that. 3, so important. Sometimes you'll meet like trustworthy, air quotes, brands with great lead flow, but they don't give a and that's the thing. You want a client who actually cares about their clients and actually gives a I think that is so rare, honestly. And it's actually quite sad how many people don't give a Like I was telling you about some of my clients earlier, and they all they cared about was revenue and scaling the business, but you can't neglect fulfillment. That is so important. 4, you want a client that wants you to make money is investing in your growth too. So when I think about good clients, like the best clients, they care about the people working with them and stuff like that. And that's like, even on this YouTube channel, I try to embody that too. Like I want to make sure that I'm feeding my core people, my core team. I'm taking care of them. I'm doing people right. Everyone from Chris Do to Vanessa Lau to Ali, so many great people, they are so invested in their team. And I see the behind the scenes stuff too, which is really cool. 5 is someone that you want to actually be friends with. Like if you can't kick it with them, like I'm not saying this is always a strong indicator, but usually if you're friends, it'll be better. So like Vanessa, she's really cool in real life. Ali, he's pretty cool too. Like I would want to hang out with him in real life too. 6, I think, is something that no one ever talks about and is so key, but sell something that you would personally buy. So I'm not sure if you guys know this, but oftentimes I will buy products because not only because I love them, I love the brand, I want to support that brand, but I also want to build a relationship sometimes too. And people are like, oh, I don't have money. I'm like, bro, how many times have we wasted money on dumb shit? Like this is like really important. I think so many times closers, especially like in this field, because they're in a survival mindset, which is okay, but they want to get first, then give, but it doesn't work like that. A lot of times you have to give first. So what? Get another job, make it work out. You're smart. You can figure this out, right? Like I'm not saying you should ask your mom or anything like that, but like oftentimes my point is you should add value that's not too strenuous on that client. Like I never offer work for free for anyone because that's not adding value. It actually adds a lot more headache because then they're wondering, oh, you're new, you're a beginner. I don't know if it's worth it. I have to pay for these leads. Like that is not a good offer. So you really need to empathize with people and really focus on that. But the thing about buying people's products and maybe potentially turning them into clients, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I don't care. Like at the end of the day, I just want to make a really good friend. And if I can support a brand, someone who I think is doing really great work, that's amazing. And the other thing too is like, if you can work with someone that you actually bought from, you're actually a customer of theirs, it makes a world of difference. Like, so with Ali, like he actually hits all the check boxes. I bought from him. I bought his high ticket stuff, his most expensive stuff. And like, honestly, it's like one of the best investments, and it probably comes off in my calls implicitly. Like if I never bought from him, then it would be kind of weird. But I think the best offers, honestly, are the ones that you're obsessed with, that you would like is offered by someone that you care about. And it's just a no-brainer offer where they pretty much sell themselves. You don't really need to like pitch or anything like that. For me, like working with Ali, I realized that, hey, I was a customer before. I love YouTube. I respect Ali for how much he's done. He like has built such a trustworthy brand, and I admire him for that. And then also like his fulfillment, everybody on the team, they actually care. They're very anti like scammers and sales things. Maybe it's too much on that side, but what I'm saying is like everybody is trying to do their best job to do people right. I cannot tell you how rare that is, especially as we see more creators go into these high ticket offers. We're going to see that a lot more. And because of all that, like usually most people are sold already. 80 to 90% of people are pre-sold. And it's really nice because by having this great content, this great brand, half the time on with people, I'm just like chopping up with people. I'm having fun. Like earlier today, I had a sales call. We both knew it was a sales call. We were joking around and stuff. She sells high ticket too, which was cool. And we're just like really just talking about the nitty gritty about her YouTube channel and just like chopping up. And we might be friends after, we might not. But I think I've hit this point where it just feels really cool because I get paid to have fun and make friends and talk about the stuff I love, you know? And I just think that authenticity, that element is so neglected in high ticket sales. And if you can find that golden like client, keep them, make sure you don't lose them, but like do your best ability to keep them. And things might change too. You might not resonate with them or anything like that, but it's really, really cool. Okay, let's go to the next one. You don't need coaching or a course, but it is highly, highly recommended. Something that no one really talks about a lot is like the ignorance tax it takes to learn a skill. Like most people like on Reddit or like these like, I don't want to call them brokies. That's not the right word. I would say the right word is inexperienced people will tell you to read a book. They will tell you to just like go to a library, but you can't learn these skills like by reading books. A really great example where reading doesn't really help you is jujitsu, right? You can read all the jujitsu books and stuff. Learning is more than just like absorbing pages and knowledge and stuff. You have to practice, you have to spar. And that's what like sales kind of is. I wouldn't call it sparring because it's more collaborative experience, but you need that experience of like understanding people, asking people questions to understand where they're coming from and seeing if you can actually help them. Right? That's so, so important. And in order to learn that skill, you have to either A, go through trial and error through different clients. You have to invest money maybe to close that gap, time, energy. Like there's multiple ways to pay this tax, but you're going to pay it eventually anyways, right? And so what I'm saying is like, it's not impossible to learn everything yourself and jump right into it. Even though I did a guru course, I actually had to read all the books and try to understand what worked, what didn't. And I did the trial and error thing. I kind of figured out over time, like, ooh, I like this. I like this. I cannot tell you how long it took me to like kind of figure out the questions of like, how do I ask someone if they can afford this without being so blunt, like direct and stuff like that. And I went through a lot of trial and error. Like I used to ask about like, oh, credit scores and stuff like that. But until I found Chris Do, I was like, oh, this is how you talk about money. But if I knew that question right off the bat, it would have been so much easier, right? And so I'm not saying that you should buy a guru course or anything like that, or you should do a high ticket coaching thing. Like full disclosure, I have like high ticket stuff on my back end, but I would highly recommend you just do a course at the minimum. And if you can't afford a course, I have one for free on the internet, like on YouTube. I'll link it somewhere here. It's a 3-hour course, completely free. You don't even have to opt in. If you want to opt in for the slides and stuff, you can do that. I just want to say self-learning is possible. It just takes a lot longer. And if you're not like experienced, it's even harder too. You don't know what's right and you don't know what's like wrong per se, like what works and what doesn't work. And one of the things I just realized too is like, having someone more experienced, it could be a coach, it could be a mentor, it could be just a regular friend, right, to just guide you. That helps so much because the ignorance tax can be very real and costly. Imagine you land your dream client and you can't fulfill and they have to fire you. You're like, oh, crap. And it's not the end of the world if that happens, but it can be costly. There is time, there's opportunity costs. All that time that we could have just learned what we're going to learn anyways, we could have just maximized it if we paid the cost up front. So I'm not saying you should fork up money for this, but the last analogy I would just want to leave you with is like, think about the top athletes. And for me, like I do jujitsu, right? And so I go to like a pretty competitive gym. All the top athletes have coaches, right? Like in jiu-jitsu, you got Gordon Ryan, John Danaher, right? Every single person has a coach. So why wouldn't you do it for business, especially if it's very like kind of like a combative sport, because you're always pressure testing. You're trying to see what works and it doesn't, and you get punched in the face and you learn a lesson. The final thing I'll say about like investing too is like, if you are in high ticket sales and you're advising someone to invest in themselves or to resolve a problem, in my opinion, it's very unethical to advise that if you haven't really experienced it yourself. I'm still sitting on this if I want to make an absolute statement about this, but I would say like as someone like who sells a lot of stuff, I've also equally probably bought a lot of stuff too, right? And I've gone through that experience myself as well. I think like if you don't go through that, you'll lack the empathy of like what kind of questions spark in your head while you're going through that customer journey. And I think that insecurity will actually be expressed implicitly. This is just a hypothesis. I don't know if it's actually going to happen, to be real with you. Like I said, I think it's pretty hypocritical to like advise others to invest in themselves when you haven't done so yourself. It's kind of like if I tell people do jujitsu, but I've never done jujitsu, or like if I'm telling people, hey, eat healthy, and I'm like super obese and stuff like that, like it's almost a little bit hypocritical. So just give that a consideration. Not telling you to buy anything, but consider it. Let's go into the other thing that I think is actually really important. Like no one talks about this. I haven't seen anyone talk about this, not Jeremy Miner or any gurus, but you can save almost any deal if you put your ego aside. I think sometimes when you get your first no or get ghosted for a first time, a lost deal can be very disheartening. It can be very like depressing because you associate that identity as rejection for yourself. Eventually you just kind of detach from that. Like for me, I don't take it personally. Like I can empathize with like, hey, some people are a little bit more conflict avoidant. Even though it's not a conflict, they feel like it in their mind, right? Saying no is hard for them. When I was coaching, like doing my cohorts for coaching, I actually had a client who I set her up with a deal. I don't do this anymore. I don't set people up with deals anymore. I was coaching her and she told me to review her call because she lost it. And she's like, I lost a deal. I felt like I had it at one point, but I don't know where I went wrong. And this again is like the ignorance tax that she paid for, right? By hiring like a coach or an advisor, right? So I was listening to a call and I realized like, I don't think it was the offer that she was not interested in. I think it was just how she was treated. So I asked my coaching client at the time, I was like, hey, why do you feel like you lost this deal? Like through your perspective. And then she was like, I feel like I didn't really listen to them and I just tried to push the deal through. And I was like, okay. And what would that person say? Like, would that person give the same feedback like as well? And then she's like, yeah. So I asked her to do something pretty unconventional. I told her, hey, pick up the phone, shoot a text over, text the person with an apology. And it should look something like this. I wrote it down. So this is a bit random, but I was thinking about our conversation the other day. And I can't help that I did a horrible job at listening to your situation, your concerns. Obviously, I missed something, and I need to apologize for that. It might be too late, but if you're open to it, I'm open to listening to everything on your mind, and we can talk about everything that's on your mind just openly. And just FYI, there's no obligation to buy, but I just want to see if I can point you in the right direction or if I can actually help you in some way. Are you open to that? How does that sound, right? And what's crazy is my client was like, oh my God, this sucks, but I'm gonna try it. She ended up doing that same advice I was telling her. They ended up jumping on a call, and that person actually ended up purchasing the next day. And I think the thing we need to realize is if we screw up, we need to take responsibility. Not as only as closers or whatnot, but just as decent human beings. We need to make sure that we're taking responsibility. And what I find is when we do take responsibility, people aren't going to be like, hey, I told you so. Most people wouldn't be like that. But people tend to be very forgiving. And what I've realized is a genuine apology and open conversation can save almost any deal out there. And in the moment, honestly, our egos hate it. Our egos hate for us to be wrong. But at the end of the day, people want to be heard, listened to, and understood. That's why people talk about mental health, inner work. This is important because if you don't do it, then you'll never be able to come to terms that hey, my ego is kicking in. I need to take a step back, and I need to be more self-aware about this situation. And just like with dating, dog, self-awareness is really sexy to people. I wish someone told me to learn high ticket sales a lot sooner. I got caught up with this. I actually almost quit high ticket sales at one point, probably midway into my career, where I was like, oh man, I really don't want to do high ticket sales for the rest of my life. And of course I didn't do the inner work. So I was really caught up in the future. I wasn't really caught up in my present. I would say based off all the people I kind of talked to in high ticket sales, there's very few people that actually love it. And I only personally started loving it when I started selling something that I personally bought, working with great clients. I sell YouTube stuff and business stuff. And that's the stuff that I really, really enjoy and I'm passionate about. And then treating the people I speak to with the uttermost respect and treating them treating myself as a trusted advisor, not a salesperson. And I don't run away that it is a sales call, but I really emphasize that, hey, I'm not sure if this would actually help you. Let's have a conversation, see what's up. And if it doesn't, I'll let you know too. Last thing I want is a resentful relationship. My goal is to have a resentment-free relationship because I don't want to waste anyone's time and stuff and resources. And people actually really feel that because it is genuine too. And so I think thinking that I was going to do high ticket sales forever for ClickFunnels Gurus, I just want to quit after that. But I think about all the skills I've kind of learned by doing high ticket sales because high ticket sales honestly has made me better as a business person and also as a general person too. I wouldn't have done mental health and all this sort of stuff if it wasn't for high ticket sales. I wouldn't be able to empathize with people as much. I wouldn't be able to coach as well without high ticket sales. And I think there's tangential things where it's made me really decent at conflict management, negotiations, copywriting, offer creations. I think the ultimate thing about high ticket sales, what it really is, yes, you learn how to collect payments and all that sort of stuff too, right? It's really the art of having really meaningful conversations where you kind of understand what makes people tick and understand what people truly care about and aligning a solution toward that. And so for me, being able to do this, I'm able to talk about really sensitive things like money and stuff. I'm able to really talk deeply about people's challenges and the frameworks and understanding how people think about certain problems and the questions about that. And I've also built up this intuition too, intuition, when to kind of lead more, when to be a little bit more passive. You develop this sixth sense, which honestly, high ticket sales has helped me approach people at coffee shops too, man. It's kind of funny. And I think with this skill, I've been able to do really cool things. So right now I'm building like AI bots to help with like YouTube content creation, like this channel, but also like creating AI bots to help like with the high ticket sales process of identifying, like scraping all the conversations that I'm having and like try to see common patterns, who our ideal avatar is, the sales process, ripping our ideal audience from a sales page, being able to create a high ticket sales script like with the snap of a finger. It is really, really crazy. That is aligned to that in our brand guidelines. So if you don't know what the that means, that's okay. But at the end of the day, I think sales is a lot more than just collecting payment. Just like how people used to tell me, well, you're a pharmacist, you just count pills. I'm like, go yourself. That's what the texts do. No, but I count controls. I think it's like I said, it's really understanding what makes people tick and the art of getting people to take action, not through external means all times, but like it's very internal. Because one of the things I think about on my calls is like, why even like go through the effort of changing our situation if the problem's not that big, right? Like just because we have a problem doesn't mean that it needs to be solved in that moment. We probably have other problems that we can prioritize too. I think the coolest ability that I've learned with high ticket sales is that I can understand someone's situation, see patterns, connect the dots with people, and articulate their problem better than they can articulate it themselves, which is really crazy. They're like, how did you read my mind? I'm like, you're not my first, just like my ex-girlfriend, right? So I do want to talk about one last thing. The truth is, like with high ticket sales, it's not the sexy, glamorous, easy path to six figures that most people talk about, right? Or make it out to be. And this actually really pisses me off. I think something that no one really talks about is that it is challenging. It is kind of unpredictable at first and requires you to become better, air quotes, as a person, right? But if you can stick it out, right? Learn like these things of how to identify red flags, how to ask really great questions, and how to stay ethical in the process. It's really, really one of the most rewarding things ever. Like, I feel like I have the confidence to go on any client and just like make them a ton of money. That rainmaker like mentality is so true. And I think if you are really good at sales, what you'll quickly realize is like you'll develop other skills that go beyond just making sales or doing sales conversations. Like you'll learn how to communicate. So FBI negotiation and sales are very very common, right? I've seen people become really great copywriters from their experience in sales. I've seen people become really great YouTubers. Hopefully me one day, hopefully I'll be a really great YouTuber because of high ticket sales too. But the most important thing is like, I feel like you'll be able to create really great long lasting relationships with clients too, just with this skill set. And at the end of the day, I think being real, not being a scammer or anything like that, that's what's going to set you across this industry. Because like I said, most people will quit. Most people are quitters, you know? By the way, if you want to learn high ticket sales, I actually have a 100% free course you can check out. It'll go over kind of the mindset stuff, how to do it, everything that you need to know. I did not hold back. It took me like 3 months to like kind of edit everything. So I put a lot of work. So check it out. Anyways, stay compassionate, stay authentic, stay rebellious. Peace, mother people. Bye.